At 69, I ask my plumber guy to do this harder and deeper. A real infidelity story. At 69 years old, Martha had expected to find a sense of peace in her twilight years, a quiet contentment after decades of marriage to Harold. They had built a life together, raising 2 kids, sharing countless meals, and weathering storms both emotional and financial. Yet lately, the weight of monotony had begun to smother her spirit. The days had blended into a humdrum of routine and predictability. It was a rainy Thursday when Jack, the plumber, first arrived. He was young, in his late 30s, with tousled dark hair and a smile that held a hint of mischief. Martha had called him after a leak appeared in the kitchen, but the rush of adrenaline she felt upon seeing him was unexpected and bewildering. Harold was at work, and as she led Jack to the back of the house, her heart raced, not just because of the leak, but at the thought of how life could feel so vibrantly different with someone else. Jack tackled the plumbing issue with a level of focus that only deepened Martha's curiosity about him. She found herself lingering, watching him work as the water dripped down from the pipe and splashed onto the floor. A playful side of her attempted to engage him in conversation, a flirtation that felt innocent enough but had the potential to delve into something much deeper. "Do you always look this good while doing plumbing?" she asked, leaning against the counter, her heart pounding with excitement. Jack chuckled, insensitive to the undertones of her compliment. "Only for my favorite clients," he teased, that smile turning from charming to downright enticing. The air thickened with tension, igniting something in Martha that had lain dormant for years. She watched as he knelt to fix the leak, his muscles working beneath the fabric of his shirt. There was an allure to his confidence, a breath of fresh air that contrasted starkly with the comfortable but dull presence of her husband. After he finished, Jack turned to her, the dim light of the kitchen casting shadows across his face. "All set," he said, wiping his hands on a rag, his gaze lingering on her too long. Martha knew she should offer him the customary cup of coffee and send him on his way, but the thought of him leaving sent an unsettling chill through her. Something primal awakened in her. She wanted more than a simple conversation. "Would you like to stay for coffee?" she blurted out, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and fear. Jack hesitated, biting his lip as though he were considering a forbidden fruit. "Sure," he replied, slowly clicking his tool belt, and she felt a thrill surge through her. They settled at the kitchen table, where the half-light created an atmosphere rich with possibility. The conversation flowed with surprising ease, touching on dreams, regrets, and the ache of unfulfilled desires. There was a fire in Jack's eyes that kept her entranced, a flicker of recognition that they both craved something beyond the ordinary. 45 minutes in, the small talk shifted to deeper topics. Martha found herself revealing more about her life, her feelings of stagnation, and the yearning for something, anything, to reignite her passion. Jack listened, genuinely interested, his gaze steady and piercing. "I think it's important to find what makes you feel alive," he said thoughtfully, his voice low. "Sometimes that means stepping outside your comfort zone." His words hung in the air, electric with implication. Martha's heartbeat quickened. The walls of propriety were crumbling around her, replaced by a wild and reckless thrill. What if I wanted something different? Something more?" she challenged, holding his gaze with fierce intensity. Jack leaned in closer, the space between them shrinking. "What do you want, Martha?" he whispered, his breath warm against her skin. In that moment, all the years of loyalty and decency evaporated. She didn't want to think of Harold, to consider the vows she'd upheld for so long. What she wanted was to feel, to breathe, to be consumed by something fierce and untamed. I want you," she finally confessed, her voice barely a murmur. An unspoken agreement passed between them. There was a palpable energy that crackled like static in the air. They both leaned in, drawn together by an undeniable force. The kiss was a revelation, an awakening that filled the void she had felt for far too long. It was tentative at first, but soon blossomed into something deeper, more demanding. As their lips moved in synchrony, the reality of their choices loomed large, but in that bubble of intimacy, it didn't matter. The world outside faded into insignificance. The rain drummed softly against the windows, a gentle backdrop to their reality. But soon the sound of a car door slamming outside pulled Martha abruptly back to reality. Her heart raced with panic as she realized it was Harold returning home early. She pulled away from Jack, her eyes wide, breathing heavily, the intoxicating moment rapidly unraveling. I can't, she stammered, confusion swirling inside her like a tempest. Jack looked equal parts exhilarated and concerned. I didn't mean to. I know, she interrupted, urgency lacing her words. She quickly composed herself and moved towards the door. You need to go. Now? The moment she opened the door, Harold stepped across the threshold, his figure silhouetted against the dim light outside. Hey, honey, I'm back, he called, a relaxed smile on his face. Martha's heart pounded as she turned back to look at Jack, his expression a mixture of understanding and regret. She offered him a silent apology as he slipped out the door, leaving her with the weight of her actions clawing at her conscience. As she stood there, the reality of what had just happened settled heavily on her chest. She had awakened a longing that can never go back to sleep. And in that moment of indecision, with Harold's footsteps echoing closer in the hall, Martha realized that her life had forever changed. What lay ahead was uncertain, a crossroads of emotion and desire, but for the first time in years, the thrill of the unknown filled her with a sense of exhilarating dread.